Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Voice, a platform for the Women Rights Initiative that is aimed at supporting us to discuss issues that affect women in Uganda and beyond. Uh, my name is Chigere Rose, your moderator for today, and I would like to um, welcome everyone that has just joined us. Today, we are going to have a discussion about gender justice and empowerment. And it's quite a broad topic and subject to discuss, but we are going to try to break it so that we all understand it and we all know exactly how we can be able to fit in and be able to support each other in the process of achieving gender equality, equity, and empowerment. I want to thank everyone across continents and nations that is working to make sure that women have a violence-free life, but also as we celebrate the 16 days of activism, I want to thank all institutions, governments that have taken it upon themselves to make sure that they design policies that are favorable to the women and children who are the biggest number that get affected with domestic violence or gender-based violence. And as we await for our guest for the show today, who is going to be discussing with us, I want to share with you about Women Rights Initiative. We are a non-profit organization that works in the east of Uganda to serve the women and the youth. And our biggest niche is ensuring that we have violent-free communities, communities that do not have violence, communities that are healthy, communities that are economically empowered, but also that are contributing back to our nation, Uganda, as a whole. And we do this through various programs. These include gender-based violence, and in this, we support survivors of domestic violence through rehabilitation and skills transfer. We offer them legal aid services, and we offer a safe shelter and space for them to stay. We equally support them in ensuring that as they get rehabilitated, they learn skills so that when they get back into their communities, they are ambassadors of change, but also that there is a difference that they make in the lives of their children, themselves as individuals, and the community that is learning from them. But most importantly, we ensure that as we are doing this, we are working with partners across board to ensure that they receive these services. Our partners include the Uganda Police, who have a mandate where cases are reported and referred to us, those that require referral and rehabilitation, the courts of law that handle cases that require access to justice. We also have the probation officers that enable us to tap into their potential and skills in terms of the way the survivors go there to take cases. But most importantly, we ensure that as we are offering them all this, we are offering them psychosocial support and welfare. And I want to thank our development partners for enabling us to do this, but also I want to thank each and everyone that is enabling us to have this online platform to air. Isabel, you're welcome.
Thank you. And maybe I should take off my mask.
Please
Thank
do,
you.
because so that we are able to hear you. And just as you came in, I was informing our followers and viewers about this platform, the Women's Voice, which is a new platform that the Women Rights Initiative has put into place to have an opportunity for us to share on a weekly basis issues that affect us as women, but most importantly, how we can use the discussions that we are picking from here for our learning and implementation. And you're welcome. Isabel, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
let you introduce yourself and tell us who you are before we dive into our conversation.
Thank you very much, Rose. I hope that I can be heard well. My name is Akita
Yes, you are.
Isabella. Okay, so my name is Akita Isabella. I'm a gender enthusiast, but before I get into who I am, my apologies that I have joined in late. I was trying to join in on my laptop and it was giving me trouble, so I'm now using my phone, and I hope that the quality is good. But I pride myself in being a leadership enthusiast, a gender enthusiast, but also someone who is very passionate about governance. And governance, not just at national level, because at times we think governance is a national level conversation, but talking about governance at institutional level, talking about governance at family level, talking about governance at different um, levels that it is exercised. And so, yes, that is who I am. Away from all that serious work, am a friend, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie. I occasionally teach Sunday school. I love singing, and I especially love Christmas. So I am at the happiest of my time right now because it's December. Yes, but that is who I am. Thank you very much.
I can imagine, and it is good to be happy because when you are happy, you live longer, and you're able to also
Yeah.
spread the positivity and the good vibes around the people that you are with. Wow, you carry a lot of I would say you carry a lot of how can I term them? You have a lot of offices in brief because you are an auntie, you're a teacher, and that speaks a lot about you. And that brings me to my next question. I would like our
Yes.
followers and viewers first understand our topic of discussion, because today we are talking about gender justice and women's empowerment, which is practically a very broad subject, but we chose you because we know that you can break it down for the viewers to understand it better and to understand the little things that they can do to be able to support gender justice and economic empowerment. So we would like to start by asking what what is gender justice in simple terms, in the layman's language?
Okay, usually I like to. So, one of the things I also said that I didn't say I am is I'm a debater. I love debate. I love modern debate, not quarreling, but I love debate. And so, usually in
Mm,
debate, because I teach debate, we always say that every time you have a motion before you, one of the things that you need to
mhm,
do is look for the problem in the motion. So because as soon as you understand the problem in the motion, then it's easy for you to engage with it. So when we talk about gender justice and women's empowerment, it's important to ask why these concepts are even important and why it's necessary that we're having a conversation on them today. Historically,
mm,
um, uh, historically, women have been placed at the periphery of life, and being at the periphery of
mm,
life means um, that our enjoyment of basic amenities was secondary to everyone's enjoyment, of those amenities. Let's just look at our homes. When we go to our villages, because now in the modern home, we may think it may not be happening now, but if you go to your average home, you know, or an average village home, usually after food is cooked, the food will be brought, and the first person to be served will be the husband. And then the children will eat, then the old people will eat, then the crumbs, after everyone has eaten, are what the mother of the home will then eat. And so that illustration is one of the many illustrations around a woman's life. But when it came to issues of pain and sorrow, again, your feelings were at the periphery. When it came to the needs in the home, the needs of the man came first, the needs of the children came next, and then your needs were thought about later in case there was anything that remained. And
yeah.
if you look at the cultural context, there are very many cultures where women were looked at in terms of cows, goats, and sheep. Okay, and so if you are, for example, accessing education, you are delaying your family's access to cows, goats, and sheep. If you are
Mm.
not yet married, you are delaying your family's access to cows, goats, and sheep, and
In
so
other
on
words,
and
you
so
are
forth. And
reducing.
so You are reduced to that, but then also anything that you did to advance yourself affected another power dynamic in your sphere. And so in an era where we are looking at a society of balance, a society that is just for both men and women, we begin to talk about gender justice. You know, we begin to say that it's not right that there is one gender that is left behind simply because it has a vagina. You know, when we talk about women's empowerment, we are saying that historically women have been disadvantaged. If we are going to look at development and the development that is contributed to by both men and women, it's important to advance the needs of women. It's important that we empower the women so that we can have them able to participate in the day-to-day activities. And I'd just like to contextualize that. Um, in the recent past, one of the conversations that we've had a lot is a conversation on panels, panels which are all male. And usually the explanation that media houses will give is that we can't find the women, But the question is, a lot of the women who are at the level of the men that we call experts today, okay? We need to be able to ask ourselves, when these men were becoming experts, where were these women? You know, these women were getting married because culture dictated that they got married. These women were getting babies because culture said they were getting old. These women had stalled their ambition so that they could build homes. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I am saying that if such sacrifices have been made, we must be able to acknowledge them so that we can make the necessary steps through either affirmative action or equity equity programming to ensure that there is gender justice, but there's also uh, women's empowerment that takes into consideration our unique realities. Thank you very much. I know that's been a very long explanation, but yeah.
Indeed, but it has ushered us into a very great conversation, because we need to be able to understand these concepts so that we can be able to work with them, and also have inclusive programming that allows both genders to participate equally, and to have the same space and platform to be able to then say we have gender equity and equality. So relating gender justice to Uganda, what is our situation in Uganda and how are we faring? Because that is important for us to know as a country, but whoever is also following us from the different continents and countries would love to know what is our context in Uganda in brief. Yeah.
So our context is our, when we talk about context today, there is the context that we were in about 2 years ago, and then there is our new context as in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, you know.
True.
And so before I even come into the context of Uganda, I think it's important that we know that women are not a homogeneous group. Okay,
True.
and so when you talk about gender justice, we're saying, what does justice look like for a woman who has disabilities? What does justice look like for an adolescent woman? What does justice look like for a woman at the grassroots who is a farmer? What does justice look like for a woman who has been abused violently? What does justice look like for a sexual minority woman? And so
True.
because those are different faces of this female gender. And so the truth of the matter is that because of the historical challenges that we have faced, we are still we are still far off from the notion of justice. Whereas we have policies, for example, that the government has put into place. So, for example, you have the gender policy, you have budgets being required to have certificates of gender equity, you have the Equal Opportunities Commission in place. Whereas strides have been made, and generally we can say that there's a commitment towards ensuring that both men and women are able to enjoy all spheres of life well. When we come to the nuances called the different faces of the female gender, I think we were still far off. Okay, so for example, if you look at the recently debated sexual offences bill, we cannot talk
Yes.
about gender justice if we're not talking um, about about sexual justice. So in the recently debated sexual offences bill, we had a situation where there were certain faces of females that were that had been kicked out of the conversation around justice. So we're saying, okay, what does justice look like for a sex worker if the sexual offences bill is criminalizing her work? What does gender justice look like for a trans woman, for a lesbian woman who chooses to identify as that? Do we then take away their rights to enjoy all spheres of life? Do we take away their rights to enjoy all do we take away their right to enjoy all all benefits around social services like education, like health, and so on and so forth? And so at the end of the day, whereas there's been strides that have been made to achieve gender justice, we cannot we cannot say that we are there yet if there are faces of the female gender that we are not paying attention to. When we talk about women, for example, living with disabilities and their experiences of sexual violence, we cannot talk about gender justice if they still do not have if they still do not have um, the opportunity, for example, to report, to have their cases investigated, and for justice to get home to them. So whereas there's been strides that have been made, I think it's important that the conversation around gender justice is looked at through the different lenses that women bring uh, to this thing that we call female. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel. That was quite an elaborative explanation. And that brings me closer to another question in relation to the subject of today, and relating it to the 16 days of activism. You know that around the world we are creating awareness for these 16 days to allow ourselves as citizens of the world acknowledge that violence is at its peak, especially for the period that we are in the pandemic, but also because it has been systemic. It is not something that we are speaking about today, but we are speaking about it because it has been systemic and it continues
Yes.
to thrive. And institutions through patriarchy are continuing to embed in it, and we are trying to say that it has to stop now. Looking at that element, how would you think in Uganda in particular, but also around the world, because of course our viewers will see us from wherever they are, how would you think it would what more strides or what more do we need to do as a country to ensure that there is gender equality and empowerment of women, because this is very, very important to enable us reach to a space where we can say that women are no longer abused, or when they are abused, there are parameters through which they can be able to have access to justice and also be able to feel that they are still important persons in society that require to be heard, that require to be listened to, that require support, but also that don't require to be stigmatized because of what has happened to them. What's
Um,
your take on that?
so on that, of course, again, it would be easy to say adhere to the laws. It would be easy to say implement the laws. It would be easy to say invest more funding into gender justice work. We have continuously pushed for. Okay, invest money into the structures that enable different genders be able to 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 enjoy, access to justice. Invest money into police. Invest money into courts of law, into the legislature. Invest money into the judiciary. Invest money into into educating, invest money into research, because, for example, one of the policies that has suffered the most in this country is actually is what is it called, the sexual, no, it's actually the framework. There's a sexuality education framework that has suffered a lot of backlash. Why? Because
Yeah.
of, one, inadequate information, two, the fact that a lot of schools in this country are owned by religious institutions, and which don't want to have a conversation around some of the contentious facets when we discuss issues of gender justice. And so investment in research would go a long way in educating the masses. Investment in communicating why some of these things are important would go a long way in achieving gender justice. But more importantly, I think as a country, we need to recognize the power centers, okay? Power centers like religious institutions, power centers like cultural institutions, power centers like schools, power centers like which other one could be a power center? Power centers
The
like
ministries.
like the ministries, you get, because as soon as we are not addressing the power centers and coming to this table of gender justice from the lens of power, I don't I think we are not doing a lot, because pushing for gender justice is pushing against traditional power structures, traditional power structures that gave men more power than women. And so at cultural level, one of the ways that you're pushing for gender justice is by saying women must have access to land, you know, and you're pushing a power center that is looking at men as as custodians of traditional land, because women will get married, women will go away. And so it is when you look at it through the cultural lens, culture is determined to continue to protect that space of land, because men are better custodians because they stay in, unlike women who get married and go out. And so that's a power center that we must recognize and deal with in that sense. When we look at culture, I mean, we look at religion, there's a lot of teachings in there around submission. There are lots of teachings around the woman's place, and whereas, so I'm a Christian, and I understand the teaching on submission. But again, the Bible is very clear. The Bible says, submit to your husbands, I think it's also saying, husbands, love your wives. But then you have narratives, for example, in society that are pushing submission to men. You're not supposed to submit to all men. You're supposed to submit to your husband. And you're supposed to submit to a husband who loves you, you know. But until, but if we are not countering those narratives, for example, at that point, we continue to push for a generalized, abuse of women in religious spaces that is advanced by doctrine which is not sound. So I think one of the ways that we address gender justice is by recognizing the power centers in the spaces that we exist in, understand that we are going against systems, and figure out how to approach those systems at that end. Because away from those systems, even if we put out all the policies under the sun, it would be difficult. Just look at the conversation around female genital mutilation. We have an FGM act. Is an FGM still continuing? You get? And why is it continuing? Because of the strong cultural ties that it has on the people. And so, yeah, that would be my proposal.
Thank you so much, Isabel. For those that have joined us and are following us, this is the Women's Voice platform where we are discussing issues that affect women, and it is aimed at creating awareness, but also allowing us to openly discuss the issues that affect us and how best we can have inclusive planning, inclusive implementation, and what you can do as an individual to make sure that the issues that we discuss, you understand them and take part into ensuring that change happens. Because change is gradual, but it does happen. So, as we wind up, Isabel, on your last thoughts, In your
Mm.
understanding, what are the three main challenges that have affected women, or the main barriers that we are that are affecting us, especially for Uganda, to meaningfully achieve empowerment? In your opinion, please give us your thoughts.
One is so I'm one person who I love money. I know what money does. I know that doors that money opens. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is access to credit, access to finance. And this really is to a woman who wants to do business, to a woman who wants to build her house. You know, that is a barrier because also if you, for example, Rose, you run a shelter, at
Yes,
Azwori. Usually when
yes,
you talk to a lot of the women who have been abused, they will tell you, "Naye ndewa, where will I go?" You know? And that question is rooted in the fact that they will have no home for their children. As long as
exactly.
housing continues to be a barrier for women, women will stay in abusive marriages. How does housing become affordable? It becomes affordable by either one, government putting up affordable housing, but two, capital to finance either women's businesses or women's acquisition of assets becomes affordable. Research just through government revolving funds shows you that of all of government revolving funds, the one that is doing best is the women's entrepreneurship fund. Why? Because women are most trustworthy. Women give back when they borrow. They are more bankable, and yet we don't see that translated in them being able to acquire capital for assets. So that's one of the first barriers, access to finance. Two is negative social and cultural norms because we are a deeply social, a deeply cultural and deeply religious community. A lot of the things that we do while saying Jesus is watching us, even if Jesus Banange is baffled. We also do a lot of things in the name of the things that, in the name of practices that our ancestors started off. Ancestors are long dead, you know, but we are trapped inside there. We are trapped into the concept, the good woman concept, and it's good to be good. The question is, what does society define as good? And at times society's definitions of good are don't complain, and
Painful.
that
This is
goodness doesn't work for
are very
you.
painful. They are very
Mm,
painful. They are
exactly.
very painful.
And then thirdly is women's access to education, you know, because a woman who has an education, one, has higher chances of being employed, has higher chances of making an income, but also has access to information around making decisions on when she gets married, what sort of when she will have children, how many children she will have, with who, and the entire conversation around sexual reproductive and health rights. So I think in the absence of those three factors, then we are where we are. Yes.
Thank you, Isabel, for those very insightful thoughts that you have shared with us today. And for those that have just
Thank
joined
you
us, you
too.
can still follow us on our social media platforms, on our Facebook page for Women Rights Initiative, and on our YouTube platform, and on our Twitter platforms. This conversation is going to still be on, and you can be able to view this, and you can be able to follow us. Punch it in your comments, and also give us your thoughts on how best we can be able to work together. And Isabel, it was an honor and a blessing to have you this morning. And for those that have not taken time to know more about this platform, this is the Women's Voice, a platform for women rights initiative where stakeholders and you, the general public, are going to be sharing insights, conversations about the different issues that affect us as women in Uganda and beyond. And we are delighted and humbled to have you. And I wanted to say this before Isabel leaves us. Is that the issue of women having credit and money is a very, very important issue, because even if it's just to go and have self care, it is harder for a woman that is not earning, that is not doing business, to be able to do it, and it opens up doors. And I want to equate it
Yes.
to the situation that we have at the shelter. We find
Mm.
ourselves in a hard situation for some women that come at the shelter with their children, after
Mm.
rehabilitating, and we want to resettle them, but they don't want to get resettled back into their houses, into their homes, into the with the previous partners, and we are now finding it difficult to have a transition. So we are looking into
Yes,
having a transitional space where a woman can be after they are from the shelter for about 3 months, as they are figuring out how to begin
what to
life
do.
again, because they have a right to begin life in a manner that allows
Mm.
them to feel comfortable, healthy, and feel that they are a part of a society that recognizes their importance as women, but also the children that they bear, because they are part of a country that is a setting where they are going to grow up and become responsible citizens. So when you talk about housing, for me, I look at it in that context, because already working with survivors has enabled us understand how difficult it is to have decent housing, but also to even have it in an affordable way. So this is particularly a question that we are going to, an issue that we are going to have more discussions on. But we are humbled that you joined us this morning. And for those that have been viewing, you have been watching the Women's Voice, and we hope to engage next week. So follow us,
Thank
give us
you.
comments, and we would be delighted to take them on. And for everyone that has joined us, thank you. Isabel, your last
Thank you very
words.
much, Roy. My last words is that for those of you who do not know, we are in the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence period. And it's 16 days of us telling the world about violence, but also pushing for a more orange world. The theme for this year's 16 days of activism is Orange the World, because orange is a
Yes.
bright color, and would like to spread the word against violence, but also spread orange, which is bright and happy, so that we are a world of happiness and joy and free of violence. And so in these 16 days, please commit to oranging the world. Commit to standing with a woman who has been violated. In case you do not know how to stand with a woman who has been violated, even if you got 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 and sent it to Rose Chigere, that would be a meal at Worry. That would be a meal at the shelter. So do something in these 16 days, and let's orange the world for every woman out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for our viewers, thank you for watching. Let's meet next week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.